All right, we're starting. All right, so, oh yeah, let me connect to the screen. So this week, for the data school presentations, we looked at, this week we studied SQL. So we decided for their last day to look at 3 different data sets, all in Exasol. So Exasol came in Wednesday and did a great training class for us.
They bugged me back here.
So there's a bunch of free data sources for people to play with out there. So I thought we would give them 2 hours each, and they had to create 3 different projects. So the first one that we looked at was the flights data. And I don't know if anybody built anything. So how do you guys want to present? Do you want to do all the flights presentations first, or do you want to do all 3 of yours at the same time? Anonymously. Present somebody else's, pretend it's somebody else's.
What?
So let's, who's got number 1?
I am.
It's Andy's.
Come on. Took about 10 minutes.
Oh, where have you got that from? Oh, where have you got that idea from?
Didn't I ask him if I could do it yesterday? Yeah. So who's got number 1?
I got it.
All right. So William is going to be up first. So the first data set we looked at was flights data, 222 million records connected live against Exasol. So William is going to present first. And why don't we do all of the flights ones first, and then we'll go around and do the second and third. Sound good? Get it out of the way. Are you going to come up here? Or are you going to sit there? Well, we could just put this in the middle.
I mean, this one. Are we going up there?
Yeah.
That way makes it sound
Just stay there. Yeah. Yeah. Come on. And guys, there was some feedback, some comments left on one of the recordings that there's a lot of background noise. So try to keep it quiet if you're not presenting, just as respectful to the other presenters. So William, you want to come up?
Hello, everyone. This is the wonderful, beautiful, amazing viz I made, which shows all the Air France flights from all around the world to Paris every day.
And then it's France.
France. And then there's a little animation thing up there. So if you click, come on, Exasol. And then if you just
hit the play button.
Yeah, there we go.
And so this is over what time period? What's it showing?
What was it again? End of
June and July 2015.
Maybe I'll speak.
Hit the play button?
Yeah, I did. It's just like this, it's not the fastest.
No, you hit the next one.
That's the default play. Oh, it's painful.
Right.
Okay. It is, isn't it?
No.
Look, there's a square that you get.
Yeah, there you go.
Cool. And then, yeah, it just does that and just shows you all the flights.
It looks like a spider.
Exactly, yeah.
So did you do, so are those, when it has like an elbow in it, is that because it's connecting in that place?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay,
it was kind of difficult to understand how the pathing worked from the data.
Right.
And I think some of them are flights that go somewhere and then come back.
Right.
And it must not go along the exact same route, so it was kind of a weird.
Sure, makes sense.
But that's pretty much all it is, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, this data set was, you'll see we all have pretty crappy things to show, to be honest.
All right, 1 down. Who's next?
As bad as mine, I'll tell you that.
Who's next? Number 2? Marcus, get up.
Might be anonymous.
No. You are presenting this as Marcus. You can just be MG for this presentation if you want.
I'll be the one who shall not be named.
Who's next? AJ? Does this make you present better? Tables
This is actually going to be like a 10-second presentation. Right. Hello, everyone. So, I didn't get very far with this one. I spent way too long sort of trying to understand the data and trying to do a map, sort of. The overall plan was to sort of show all flights departing from Dublin based on what airlines fly from Dublin. So you've got like Aer Lingus,
Right.
Ryanair, there's a City something, and something else, which I'll show you in a second. But as for creating an actual visualization, it did not come out very well at all. Compared to Wales, this is going to be absolutely pants. But hey, sometimes you can get it really well, sometimes you can't. And yeah, I spent way too long sort of trying to get my outbound flights as a single sort of line. And no matter what I tried, I couldn't get it to work. And that's a lesson for me for next time, sort of spend less time trying to understand the data and more time getting it sorted. And yeah, so that's what I came up with this one.
All right.
Yeah, it's not really the best, but you'll see as my other ones progress on, it does get better. But yeah, for our first one, it was really terrible. So yeah.
Golf clap. I deserve no claps, he says. And it looks like I've got the link wrong on Twitter, so I need to fix that.
Should I do that first?
No.
Okay, yep. More than a minute. A couple of days.
No, yeah, it's definitely the wrong link.
Do you want to switch with me or live?
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm AJ, and yeah, I got my inspiration from my my colleague William. But initially, what I wanted to do was I wanted to compare like two of the big to Airbus and Boeing. But then for some reason there was loads of data for Airbus A330. I think that's the biggest one they do, and the competitors would be 747. But then there was hardly any data for Boeing for some reason. So again, it kind of goes down to like data being not structured properly and not like loads of no's there as well. But yeah, essentially at the end, like this is what I got. It's basically all the Etihad flights from Abu Dhabi. That's their hub. It also shows you top destinations. But again, like if you look at the pathway, although it does all lead to Abu Dhabi, there's loads of errors in the paths and stuff. But yeah, thank you.
Yours looks a lot like William's. Who's next?
5.
What number were you?
5.
I don't know. What number? Yeah, AJ was 4? Okay. Oh, present and download.
Oh. Can you see my screen? So mine is even more uninsightful. I ended up just kind of doesn't display on the screen very well. It's actually green.
It's green.
It's green, but it looks completely white on our screen. Oh well. It's just basically a density map of all of the destinations. So you can see that
cool.
most of Europe is kind of destinations.
Sorry.
And because it's, density, some of them have multiple locations to and from. So the more dense places are kind of hard to identify, but you can see where places are going to. And or to look at it visually, it's pretty, but that's pretty much all it does. It's not too.
So is it sized by the number of flights as well then? I muted you.
Right, we're all good then. So
cool.
it is.
It reminds me of the. Have you guys seen the Facebook users map that looks like this on where Facebook people around the world use it? It looks a lot like this, and you can it almost gives a, because most people live on the coasts in countries, you can almost see the outline of every country. It looks like it on our screen.
Okay.
It's just up there on the TV. Cool. It looks neat.
Yeah.
Okay. Well done.
Thank you.
So my one's another just basic flight path one, and mine's just BA, international flights from Heathrow and Gatwick, I think. So here you can see at the top, you can change the total number of flights. The destinations only had one flight. You can take off, so more popular destinations are shown as you go along.
So is that that's 3 months combined right now, right?
Yeah, the 3 months combined, but if I just go to May, obviously it's lower, it only goes up to like here.
So there's some place where they fly 38 times in the month, right?
Yeah.
So that means more than one flight a day?
No, so it's 38 times in total, so
okay.
Yeah, it's more than.
Gotcha.
So like San Francisco's 24, so I can see what the most popular one is.
Oh, and it's just BA anyway?
Yeah. So Stockholm's the most popular.
37 flights a day.
But what took a lot of time was to do the pathing. So as you see, my pathing's all clean and straight. Hasn't got the like, dots like Will now.
Yeah.
So what I had to do is I had to create a subset of data. So I've done a data source filter, took it down to BA, and took it down to just London airports. Then I separated it. It had the airport codes in the destination, so it would have LHW for Heathrow, then Stan for Stansted. I separated them and then added latitudes and longitudes for the airport codes in Autoix. I dragged it into 2 sections. This would be the home airport, this would be the away airport.
Yep.
Gave them a path ID of 1 and 2, unioned it, and that worked in Tableau better.
Cool.
So,
Yeah. Very good. Good job. Thanks.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's all right.
Did he jump in front of you?
Copy anyway. Do I have to accept?
That would help.
Yeah. So that might be the case.
It's amazing how it's the last week and we still don't know how to use the GoToMeeting, right?
Do I have to hide this? I'm joking. Yeah, I mean, same sort of idea really. So we had a big set of data. Wanted to knuckle it down just a little bit, so I chose Ryanair because I've just had a miserable experience with them last weekend.
Like everybody else.
So yeah, I wanted to see where they travel. So this is them within Europe over that 3-month period. What I just added a little bit extra around.
What do the colors mean?
Yeah, so I divide it up in terms of like popularity of route.
Oh, okay.
So you see like some places, yeah, they go up to 40.
So it's less than 10 flights, is what that means?
Yeah, I think so. The data was slightly ambiguous,
Okay.
but I'm pretty confident in that. So
Okay.
I think that's 10 flights a day.
It's hard to see from the back of the room. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So what's the, so can you just do the 40s?
Yeah.
And what's the, like the one at the bottom there? That's two, whatever that is.
Marrakesh.
Okay. 35 flights over the summer. Wow, that's a lot.
Yes, over the 3-month period.
Yeah.
I think that's right, because it's all coming from Stansted.
Yeah.
It's just filtered down to there.
Okay. So that's one of the things I think everybody struggled with is you tried to play with all of the data at once instead of trying to focus, right? So everybody naturally created a map first because that's what people do when they see latitude and longitude, and they try to put 220 million records on a map.
After 10 minutes of it trying to load.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of a good lesson for everybody is don't start with the most data. Start small and kind of grow out from there. So, cool. Good.
Hi guys. So my approach was a little bit different because I knew that everybody was going to go with a map. I decided to go without a map and focus on different airlines and compare those airlines that I can pick from the top filter and see how they compare to a similar airline. So for here, I noticed a few budget airlines from Europe, so I went with them, Ryanair, Wizz Air, and let's pick EasyJet. Here it is. So that's gonna be added up to the.
So you get a third color then? Okay.
Yep. So the colors are actually the company colors. So I didn't pick everything that's gonna happen right now. So basically, we have an overall view on all of the flights they have for the period that we have data for, from May till July. And I've noticed a very interesting dip on the 11th of June, 2015, a Thursday, and there's absolutely nothing online about something happening that day. So when this actually loads, you see the same thing happen.
And same thing in Wizz Air as well.
Yeah, all things.
So I wonder if that day maybe the data that's coming in isn't,
I'm not sure, yeah. Another interesting thing is the data was structured by different routes, so from one destination to another, because it's not, in Europe usually they don't land and then go off again. So basically you see that usually airlines don't operate on the same routes in the same price brackets, so only a few times they would overlap I think
Oh,
this
okay.
is Budapest.
So they don't share a lot of routes then.
Yeah,
Oh,
that was an interesting thing
Yeah.
I came
that's
across.
surprising. Yeah, I would have expected them to share more routes.
I think that they share with different price ranges.
Okay.
So an expensive company would share more on the same routes. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to show.
Very good.
Why do you
Nice.
do a logarithmic axis for your bottom?
Because I wanted to show if they overlap, and since some of these have like 58 flights and this is 1,000, you can't really see if there's a big overlap or if there's an overlap at all. So if I change the axis here, it's going to be like this small,
Yeah, I
just
guess.
for visual purposes.
Yeah, I guess. Well, she did note it on there at least. So
Yeah.
I guess the other option would be to exclude the nulls, maybe,
Yeah,
and then maybe you wouldn't need it, but it's okay.
I
So
consider that.
at least you noted it because that'd be an easy thing to not notice. Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
good.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
well done. Good. No, you're 8. That's okay. You get to go first, coming back around.
Oh,
So you can go twice in a row.
Save the best till last.
Right.
Somebody will trip on that at some point.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hazard. Maybe we should just budge it over now.
Okay, so there we go. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really get an awful lot. I sort of went down a rabbit hole and was trying to do something.
Too much?
I didn't get very far, but I was trying to work out how long each flight was, and like to start with, I was just trying to get like the actual time out of it, just get that as individual
Right.
kind of string and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I was getting some really strange numbers. So like, I guess the flight is supposed to be like, I don't know, 67, 78 minutes, but then I was getting ones like 53,000. So that's kind of where I got up to before the next data set. But in the time of the presentations, I thought I'd not come up empty-handed and just put something really bad together. So it just sort of shows this is for United Kingdom Airlines, and you can just see all of the.
What's ABZ?
These are like they're like the airport
Codes?
short
No,
codes.
what airport is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
honestly, I just put
That's
this
fine.
together in the last 5 minutes.
Okay.
So,
This one's going from the black dot to the orange dot.
yeah,
Okay.
that's it. So yeah, not very insightful. So a bit of a fail on the first one, unfortunately.
All right, no worries. Stay there.
Okay,
So the second data set that we worked on was, what was it? The Chicago taxi data, and that one is 105 million records. So we'll go back over to Lee here to present the Chicago taxi base.
Okay.
You own this, right?
So this is my terrible taxi viz. So I was just looking at like tips for taxi drivers, how to get a good tip. So I just worked out the average tip, the frequency of tips. So people mostly tip $2, for example, and that people are most generous at like 6 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, so that's time of day, hour of the day.
Yeah, hour of the day. Yeah, so I
that's
didn't
good.
label that very well. Areas where they should cover if they wanted to get good tips. So like the 15 best areas are in the darker blue.
That's interesting. I wonder what that area is in the south part there where there's a cluster of them.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I wanted to like draw like, or do something to draw that area, just say like cover this sort of.
Sure, yeah.
And then at the bottom here, just showing a bit of seasonality. People were much more generous in, I haven't put the legend in there, sorry, but 2016 people were much more generous.
In general, it looks like they're more generous in the winter. Or what is that, October, November, generally? Is that what it is?
So it kind of drops in the summer and winter months, and then in the spring and autumn it.
I wonder if
came
people
back up.
aren't taking them as much or something, or maybe it rains more at those times of the year or something
Yeah,
like that.
could have been that. And then it was showing just a strong trend between the average tip and the average trip per mile. So,
Yeah,
you know,
well, that
obviously
kind
people
of makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It was a good R squared value, right?
That's good. You were able to answer a lot of questions pretty quickly with this one.
Yeah, but I didn't get a lot of time to spend on the format, so it doesn't
That's okay.
So,
Lee, what's the background map?
that's through Mapbox.
Which one? Pixel?
I can't tell you off the top of my head. I just did the satellite one for.
Yeah, for the other one, right?
Yeah, so I can't remember now off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looks like that. Yeah.
Cool.
Yes, sir. Well done. So we're going backwards.
Go backwards.
Yeah. So Lane is back up. I'll go after you.
Then I'll do me again.
No, then I'll go again. I've got to.
So you're going to do and then back to
Yeah.
graduation.
I'll show you that.
So this is my taxi
sorry.
list.
Sorry about that.
So I didn't get a lot of time to show things additionally on the map, so it's going to be a thing for me to try to skip a map if it's possible. So I went to show things from the perspective of tipping and frequency of hired taxi fares. So I've excluded from the data set all the 0% tips from that we had and showed what days tippings are more frequent. So as you can see, Saturdays and Sundays are kind of the worst days for tipping. And here we have this graph showing the number of trips in orange and the average trips per hour of the day. So let's go ahead and change the year here because I'm focusing on specific years. If this changes, it's not moving. I don't know why.
There it goes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Probably because
So much
big data set, yeah. So these top charts will show the same trend throughout the years and throughout the months.
I like the table or the calendar.
Yeah.
That looks really good.
Thanks. So if you're a taxi driver, you should probably focus more on Mondays.
Yeah.
And
Well, it kind of looks like the work week, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you're returning people home from, I don't know, partying during the early hours, it's also going to be a bigger tip. If we go down, I have, if this really shows well, I have every single day in the selected year. And the same trend happens that most trips happen on this day, 11th of
St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, St. Patrick's Day. And the least trips will be always for Christmas.
Yeah, which makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, it's kind of, the data set shows that taxis are always required.
Yeah. So what are all the peaks? Are those Mondays or Fridays or like all the little? Oh, I guess it's hard to tell without knowing the day off the top of our head.
Yeah.
Okay. But is it every 7 days that you see those little peaks? I would assume so, right?
Let me see.
So that's the 24th, and then what's the next?
29th, yeah.
What's the next peak to the right of that?
30th
30th.
and 25th. So
No,
it is weekends.
The next peak next to it. So yeah,
Yeah.
so it's every.
16th of
It's
May,
okay, yeah. So it looks like it's every.
30th May. There's a big dip here, for example, 26th. Some of these don't really make sense, but it's probably
Well, those
weekends.
other dip. What's this dip here? What's that one?
That one.
So
First of
that's
September.
probably Labor Day.
Oh, okay.
It's a holiday. Yeah.
And here July.
July 4th.
Yeah.
Independence Day from the
Independence.
UK, from the Brits.
It's also a celebration for us.
Celebration. Got rid of us.
The
All right, well done.
immense
Good job.
celebration. Oh yeah, big data set. Yeah, so I was going for a just general breakdown of the Chicago taxi system. So what I wanted to look at was in terms of like where were the most popular pickup zones, where were the most popular drop-off points. I then wanted to have just a general look at where the most expensive fares in the city were occurring. And then here I've done a kind of marginal histogram in terms of like when the service was busiest. So obviously down here we've got days, across here we've got hours. I managed to build in some interactivity. So if you were to like hover over the north side, you can see like on Monday morning it's really, really busy.
Does it update did it update the stuff down here as well?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, see here.
Okay.
So
I just
if
saw
I
the map.
thumb you off,
Okay.
you can see like it returns to
Oh,
like, the
neat.
general picture. The histogram also changes, which is quite cool. On the histogram, I've put duration, so like the duration of trip and fare. It's quite interesting. Like towards the end of the day, fare bumps, even though the duration kind of stays low.
And is that what'd you use for the fare? The fare field or the total cost?
Fare.
Okay.
I used the
So
fare.
it doesn't
field.
include tip then. Okay.
No, it's just the raw fare.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see like so here.
So you can see where the
Fringe
airports
are really
are.
expensive. Yeah, the O'Hare is like obviously if you hover over in terms of like pickup.
Yeah.
You see a lot of flights coming.
Yeah. Monday mornings.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of general
travelers,
overview.
basically, yeah. That's basically a business traveler schedule.
Yeah, pretty much. People flying out early
In the mornings and out Thursday and Friday nights. Yeah. Oh, there's no Thursday in there. Where's Thursday?
Yeah, just want to pay him. I don't actually know where Thursday is. Have a look.
Well, you've got 7 bars, but you only have 7 days listed.
Have a look.
You've got 7 there,
Yeah.
but you didn't have 7 on the other one.
Maybe it's
Go to your
just-
heat
For the heat map?
map.
Oh, on the heat map.
Yeah.
It's going to take ages to load now.
So where's Thursday? So right click on your weekday, on your rows. Do show hidden data.
I've been that.
So you hit it by accident.
Yeah, I don't like Thursdays.
There you go. See, Thursday, but that shows you Monday mornings and Thursday evenings, because that's when most business people travel.
Of
in and
course,
out of
yeah,
Chicago.
all the consultants coming back to town.
Yep.
Yeah, but yeah. I was quite after that
Cool.
for
Nice.
a rush
Yeah,
trip.
it looks good. Good. Well done.
So with this one, I was more going something interactive, like a cab driver could use. So it's related to tips again. So the top,
Are they going to have a computer or an iPad in there?
God knows, but it's just before you start your day. Like so, here it's set on Monday. So average tip is $3.56. Then the highest tipping community from where you start from is Morgan Park.
Oh, okay.
And then what you can see here is on a Monday, like most people said, 5 in the morning is the most common time. So you can click here. The average tip changes to 5.28. West Long's now the most popular area. And then on the right, this bit here, you can choose whether distance or fare is the most important thing. So here you can see fare has a fairly solid R relationship, while distance doesn't. So obviously at this time you'd want to be doing a lot of short trips because as you can see here, you're still getting high tips even though the trip's not very far. So
It's probably because Monday morning people just want to get where they go,
yeah.
right?
So and I think that obviously relationships do change slightly during the day. So relationships are a little bit better now if it's later in the day between distance and fare.
Oh, interesting.
And then, but the thing with fare is fare always seems to have a solid
Yeah.
relationship with tips, while distance.
Because it's probably a percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But while distance, as I said, can change according to the time of day. So late at night when you've got drunk people, go for the short, quick journeys and you'll get more tips.
Or it could be people just going to work early.
Yeah. All
right.
That's
Good.
it.
Who's next? It's going to make me present and download again.
It's not. It's just saying it is.
Oh,
It's fine.
must remember when you first joined or something.
Yeah.
Oh, colorful.
Yeah. So I should explain.
Those sunglasses.
I've gone with this palette because it is kind of nice and how it kind of explains the lifestyle of the taxi driver. Yeah, I knew everybody was going to go with fares for this data set, so I kind of wanted to look at time more so. So down this axis is the hours of the day. On the first histogram is the months, and then on the second one is the days of the week. So it was kind of interesting to see during the summer months, and you can kind of have this reduced time of inactivity, because the darker period is kind of when the taxis are inactive, and the redder periods are when they are more active. So you can kind of see almost like a day frame.
So it's pretty consistent, though.
Yeah, it's pretty consistent. It tends to be the evenings, but you can just see this kind of period open up as the daylight hours, I guess, get.
This is really interesting. Sundays.
Yeah.
So Friday nights and Saturday nights.
Wow.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is exactly the person coming home partying.
So
or-
it basically starts at Fridays at 6 and doesn't end until Sunday or Saturdays at 2 a.m.
Yeah. So I kind of thought this palette was one like justifiable case of using it. Is actually really look nice to see the very kind of inactive periods and the very active periods. And you can see it for the months and the days. Then just kind of included some aggregate figures, and I kind of went down the rabbit hole of this of when you tried to do, let's say, for example, the per companies. You realize that a lot of the bits in this data are a mixture of actual companies and then people, and then it doesn't seem fair to do the average between those two different things, and trying to do the total trips when you take out certain values versus not. And yeah, so I kind of went down the rabbit hole of investigating the data a bit too much and like trying to clean it, and it had, different things that should have been compared together. So for most of it, I just kind of wanted to look at time, so that's what I did.
Good.
Is me? Yeah, so I did pretty much all of my analysis using the tip ratio, which is just tip over the fare rate. So the first one just shows you, so for a cab driver, anyone who's getting picked up from the airport is gonna get my two tips. Not really nice.
So is that the top? That's the top. How many?
Oh, here. Sorry.
Is that it's
That's
not
the
showing
highest.
every pickup location, but is it the top?
Oh, top. Yeah, that's top 20.
Top 20.
Top
Okay.
20, yeah. So that's the top 20. Yeah, if I had all of them, it would just, it
Yeah.
didn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, I just took 20 for both of the maps.
Okay.
So it's just showing you where, if someone wants to get the highest tip rate, where you should drive. And in the bottom part of it shows the heat map. So I'm trying to understand why in Saturday, still, that's the lowest rate, ratio
Tips.
of tips you'd get.
Mm.
It might be high tips, but then with actual ride might be quite expensive as well.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's quite interesting as well. And the same here on Monday, in early mornings of Mondays as well.
So is that average tip on the right-hand side as well then? So you're aggregating by hour on the right.
That's right,
The
yeah.
average tip, so it's 10 cents or almost 11 cents, or is that?
Oh no, that's the rate. That's the ratio. Yeah.
Percentage?
No, just the ratio. Yeah, but I can make that into percentage. But that's the ratio.
What do you mean?
That's the ratio of sum of. Yeah, it's not average. This is sum of actually.
No, but what are you dividing by what?
Just tip divided by the fare.
Total fare?
Total fare.
The fare or the total cost?
Total fare, yeah. Total fare. Total tip divided by total fare.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's like the percent tip, basically.
Yeah, percent tip,
Okay.
yeah. I can know this. So yeah,
Cool.
it's basic. Yeah.
Nice. What number were you?
3.
Who's number 2? Oh, Marcus. Marcus, yes. You gonna get up? Come on, get up. Okay. Faster.
So yes, sir. Right, yeah. So where are we? So my second dashboard, I gave up on maps completely after I wanted to kill myself after the first try. So I went for a sort of marginal histogram for the taxi services in Chicago. What we have in view, so our main highlight table sort of outlines the total amount of the measure that's being assessed through years and months. So as we can see, we've got 2014 running costs of 2015, and then we have the months. The bar chart on top sort of shows the sum of fare earned within that month. And to the right, we have the year, so the fares earned by the year. So I've done this sort of so it can be very dynamic. So if you're looking at a taxi company and you want to see sort of how much fares they've earned or how many tips they've earned during their trips. I've also chose to sort of include the average tips earned by each cab company or cab service, and also sort of the average trip in miles that they've travelled. I've also included in here as well sort of just over time sort of the amount of tips or the measure you're looking at, how it's gone up and down over time.
So it's almost like your heat map, but just in one line.
Yeah. So it's basically heat map, but just in a line chart.
But it uses up that space well then.
Yeah. And so you can also put a trend line on there so you can sort of see whether the trends are going up or down over time.
Yeah, because you can't really see the trend in the heat map necessarily.
Whereas here,
other than here you can because the color's so bad.
Yeah. And again, so it's very dynamic in the sense of you can choose your measure. You can look at different.
Good use of parameters there too. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see here some taxi companies didn't work in certain periods.
Can you click on the taxi service list again?
Yeah. So it wasn't until quite late that we realized that some of them are individuals and some are actually companies.
Okay.
But it was onto our second dashboard, but our third dashboard. Yes, our third dashboard by the time we started building.
Which one which taxi service had the most trips? Do you know off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head. I did have it on
Taxi
the
affiliation service possibly?
I think so, yeah.
Third from the bottom?
Absolutely.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
But you wonder, it'd be interesting to combine this with like Uber data or something like that to see if it's impacting, like if that's why that's going down.
But yeah, it's just a very dynamic sheet of
nice.
looking at different measures across different companies.
That's good. Good job.
So just like everybody else.
Everybody else did this.
Whoa, marginal histogram.
Oh,
map. And map. And it's also a guide to
It's
help taxi
interesting
drivers.
how much simpler your second ones are than your first ones.
Yeah, the data here is a lot better in my opinion, a lot better to play with. But yeah, so everybody else, this is a guide to help taxi drivers figure out when to go out and make the most tips. So it just has these big numbers up there, give you the average tip overall, the average fare, and then here a heat map with the days and the time during the day, with a just marginal histogram at the top, so showing you the overall for the days themselves. And on the right, just a map of the city. And I've just created this set that'll dynamically change. So for example, right now it's showing you the 5 overall best areas to go to get the highest tips. So if I just pick any of these ones at random, it'll update on the right and it'll tell you these are the best neighborhoods at that time of the day on Friday to go make the most money. Cool. And at the top, it'll tell you how much you can expect to make in both your fare and your tip.
Yeah, the problem there is your histogram gets your top bar chart.
Aesthetic wise, not the best, but
Change direction.
Yeah, direction.
Yeah, exactly. But
it looks nice.
And that's a box map as well as the dark one. I think it looks quite slick.
All right, so I'm going to present next. Let's see. I can make myself presenter. Show my screen. Okay, so yesterday when Eva and I were doing the Makeover Monday Viz review, we saw this great viz by Suraj Shah, and I was looking for an excuse to try to remake this with a different data set. So with his permission, I wanted to try to make something as similar as I could. So I thought the Chicago taxi data seemed like a decent enough one to do it. So this is my viz for Chicago taxi trips. So I took out 2017 because there was only 1 month. So this is looking at 48 months worth of data. And basically, so similar to his, I got the big numbers on the right-hand side. I filtered it down to just the near north side so that I could publish it to Tableau Public, because that's the largest pickup location other than, there's one that's like, there's one that's, it says like not identified or something like that, or I don't know. So I took that one out. Masked for privacy or something like that. Yeah. So I'm using just near north side, and then the visualization actually is looking at each of the drop-off locations. And similar to what he did, I've got a line. So the dark line represents the average for each month, And then I have the overall average, which is 14.81, but I had to do that with an LOD. So, and then I just color coded it below or above, which I thought helped because the average line is so low, but it's actually, so 50% of the trips are, or 51% actually, were below 1481. So I thought that was really interesting. But from near north side, there were 9.9 million trips in 4 years. 4 years, yeah. And average distance of less than 3 miles at almost $15 per trip. So that total cost is the fare plus the tip. Yeah. And then I guess the last data set that we looked at was the Philadelphia parking violations. So this one was smaller, so 7.4 million. And this actually came up based on a Makeover Monday session that Eva and I did with Amar from, it was for St. Joseph's, I believe, right? And they were actually using this data set, or Corey as well, Corey Jones. And I told them that I would go ahead and give it a go. So this is what I did. So I ended up putting all the data in Mapbox so you guys could play with it as well. Oops, and there goes my screen. Okay, something's wrong here. But so ignore everything in the background and try to pay attention to just the viz itself. Let me see if I can change this. Sorry. Share.
You did help me.
Let's see if it works better this way. Okay, hopefully this is a bit better. Okay. Full screen. Okay, same thing. Fantastic. So the embedding isn't working very well, so let's just pretend like it does. So in this case, I just want to look at violations by month, and then I think everybody else did something similar, kind of just created a simple zip code map. I think the field map actually works okay here because you can see all of the zip codes, except for there's one tiny one right in here, right in there that's hard to see, but that's okay. And then I just wanted to look at, the top, what are the top 5 violation types and who issues the most citations. And then I believe there's interactivity, so if I click on that zip code, it'll show you the trend for that zip code. This Philadelphia Eagles Stadium is down here, and this does use Eagles colors, Jamie. So I went with the Philadelphia Eagles theme. I have an official color palette in my tablet workbook, and you can do violations or fines. And this is looking at the number of fines. So the numbers are pretty much the same.
I'm not dialed in and say those walks.
Hawks, oh, St. Joe's. Yeah, that's who St. Joe's is. All right, so back over to William. Yeah.
I'm set. So, to get better stuff. Hey, what's these?
This is kind of ridiculous, to be honest, but I wanted to, so the Philadelphia,
Why we also need a wall.
this data set showed all
You
the,
can put a wall between Philadelphia and New Jersey. That'd be perfectly fine, except there's water there already.
the foreigners are always worse. But so the data showed where the people that got all the different fines in Philadelphia came from. So the majority of them were from the States, but there were a few sneaky foreigners in there as well. And so I pretty much excluded all the Americans' license plates and only kept the foreigner ones.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd used this quite cool map box template in the back and just put this field map on top. Top right is all the fines
That's
caused by
interesting because
these.
it's very different than the one that, so where I showed it was in the middle, right where the word Philadelphia is, in
Yeah.
Center City. That's where
Right.
the heat map was, and it's more
Right.
on the outsides of the city.
So these are all the fines caused by those dirty foreigners. And here you can see the highest average fine per country.
Okay,
So the Czechs, 301.
but there were only 2
Ridiculous.
fines.
Yeah, 2 or 3, I think.
Yeah.
But actually the coolest part about this is how the map kind of evolved as you click on it. So you actually zoom in directly on the neighborhood and you can see it.
Yeah.
So for a few other ones,
That was the same car. That
so we got this one. And this, it's
It was
kind
the
of,
same car that parked in a handicap zone 3 times.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, goddamn Czechs. Can't trust them. But so yeah, just I kind of like how the map evolved as you click and just show you.
And that's a Mapbox map, I assume.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that Yugoslavia? Why you?
You guys, that's not a country anymore.
No, you have that. Why you? Why is that?
What is YU?
It is Yugoslavia.
Oh, quiz.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, I really
Muslim
like how the
red,
map
so
evolved.
that's
Just click on it. So yeah, it just gives you the total fines caused by people from that country.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So you probably actually technically shouldn't have Puerto Rico and Guam in there because they're U.S. territories.
territories. But are people born
And
in
you
Puerto
have the
Rico?
U.S. in there. So click on the one that says U.S. because that's probably diplomats.
It's probably
And government plates.
What
So
does it say,
right
US?
envelope right there. Yes. Just listed. About 10 up from where you are.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
U.S. maybe.
So I wonder if there's something where that red area is. I wonder if there's some government buildings near there or something.
But yeah, so that's just my little ridiculous end of the day biz.
Cool. Good. Well done.
Yeah.
I'll show you when I turn it off.
Should we make the DS7s present their applications?
Yes.
These first small today.
Okay, sorry. You don't like that idea? Charlie, you don't like that idea? Speechless.
So for our final visualization, the Philadelphia parking fines, as Will explained, we were sort of looking into the areas or the origins of the country where the people who got fined came from.
Okay. Or states.
Or states, yes. When I pulled it up on the map, I sort of pulled out the certain states or the main areas where they came from and split them into 5 regions. So we can sort of see there's a few fines from Canada, Hawaii, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, USA, Jay.
Hey.
Now I get it. What's his name?
And so what I wanted to look at is sort of over time, when do most fines happen? And we can sort of see, I've added in another trend line in there to sort of see, like we can see how the trend has rised over time ever so slightly.
Yeah.
I also wanted to look at where the violations happened by looking at the count of fines in that area. So it's the top 10s, these ones here. So you've got the top reasons for people being fined, and also the percentage of total of who's giving out the fines.
Right.
Yeah.
So PPA must be like the Philadelphia Parking Authority.
Yeah.
or something
So
like
when
that.
I looked at the map, the PPA sort of covered the whole of the US.
Yeah, so it must be that's probably all they do is like the people you see walking around the streets.
Yeah.
Here,
So you have the PPA and the police were the only two who sort of covered the whole map.
Yeah.
For their sort of zone.
Well, Penn SEPTA's trains.
Mm-hmm.
That's a train system, so they would do parking violations at train stations. Penn, Temple are universities. I don't know what the Houston is. No idea. Prison. Probably figure that one out.
Yeah.
I assume Posto is probably post office.
And yeah, so people can sort of go in. So if they want to look at what's been going on in Canada,
So that's like the light based off the license plate or whatever, right?
That's correct.
The country thing they had.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can sort of see trends in people
Not too
coming from
bad.
Canada.
Yeah.
No, not too bad. Sort of where they've been fined.
So the circles at the top, are those sorted in any particular order?
No, they're just sort of
Alphabetical? Okay.
just-
Or not
yeah.
really at all? Yeah, not alphabetical. Yeah.
no. But yeah,
I like the average of 0, 0.
Yeah.
That's good. Good tool tip.
Thanks, Andy. I was going to say that out, but it didn't happen in time. And yeah, so the user can go in and sort of look at the different regions.
Yeah. So most of them will be from the US, obviously.
Yeah. So you've got US over here.
USAJ.
And you can see pretty much goes back to the overview.
I wonder where 500 South 2nd Street is. That's a lot of fines. It's
Yeah.
like,
So I did want to go for maps because everyone was using maps, so I thought I'd try something different.
Sure.
And yeah, I think it worked out pretty well actually.
Oh, thank you,
let's see. USAJ, where are you?
And this route is on that you showed us this.
Cool. Is he on the web app?
No, but I posted
Oh.
it.
Yeah, to go back to our PPAs, that's the
Oh, okay,
Philadelphia
okay.
Parking Authority. And yeah, mine
So did you filter down to just them for yours? Your
No,
bids?
I didn't realize there was two of them, so Yeah, I need to probably do that.
I
But
would
yeah,
think so if you're putting the logo in there. Yeah. That would
yeah, probably should have. I thought they were the only ones handing out the fines.
Oh.
So yeah. But yeah, essentially, it just gives you different zip codes, and you can just kind of filter it down to the certain zip codes. So if you filter it down, it shows you what the top violation is, and then obviously the map, the area map also changes as well, and then so does the total number of fines and some amount of fines. Pretty simple, effective.
Nice and simple.
Very nice as well.
All right, good job. You didn't stand, so I didn't see who.
You just sat there.
So I've saved the worst for last in this case.
Oh no.
What is that icon?
Yeah, so I had no inspiration looking at this. I kind of looked at all the data, and pretty much all of the offences. So yeah, it's basically there's lots of different offences, and almost all the time it was that they hadn't paid the meter. So I was like, well, that's not very exciting. No matter what you filter, you're always just going to find it's never that they paid the meter. So I decided to focus on only the offence. The bus is not in the bus stand, because that was actually kind of interesting sounding.
So this is actual bus drivers getting parking tickets.
For not parking in the bus stands.
Oh my
Where
God.
can you park a bus when it's not a bus stand?
I don't know, but I just...
On 5th Street, obviously.
Yeah. So yeah, 106 times they parked on 5th Street and felt they could get away with it, apparently. And they've gotten particularly bad about it in September. They're up 375% apparently, which is something like, let's have a look, 57 times. They've just,
Wow, that's
Yeah.
almost half the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my pretty boring but kind of just funny topic. Because,
Good. Oh, so that explains the icon then.
yeah, it's just because they couldn't park in the bus stand.
Well done. Good job.
Make sure you upload.
So mine was similar to Will's. It was focusing on people outside of Pennsylvania's number plate, so I went out of town as caused violations and what the most popular ones are. So as you can see at the top is a map just showing the areas. Then it shows by month and days when it's most popular for fines. And here's the top 10 most fines, and as Mina mentioned earlier, it's mainly metered expired. But if you click where you said the Philadelphia Eagles Stadium was down here. So here's mainly parking prohibited, so probably fans just parking wherever they wanted to.
Probably.
Yeah, and obviously where they're setting up, what's it called that before game when they all drink the beers and stuff?
Tailgating.
Probably tailgating, that was probably all the fines at tailgating.
Well, all of the sports stadiums are down there, so that's why you don't see. So if you click on it again, you see how it's kind of spread across. There's no concentration on Sundays.
Oh, Sundays.
Because the baseball and hockey and basketball are all in the same. They're all in the same area. All the stadiums are right next to each other.
So that makes sense. So yeah, so it's just, I said it's interactive. You can click around. You can even click on the map on the violation. I need to fix that now. So here you can see prohibited is not mainly there. But yeah, it's just an interactive map, just showing you can change the year.
Can you click on just the parking prohibited at the bottom? Yeah. And I wonder if what that parking prohibited. Yeah. Okay, so same, still in the center.
Still concentrated. Obviously that's the main city centre, so that's where the most is going to happen.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Just
How about the handicap?
Where's that?
HP reserve space. Third one. People
Very
parking.
concentrated in the centre
still
as
same
well.
thing. Okay.
But yeah, it's just a quick way to have a look around all the different data and just interactive map. But
parking on the sidewalk. That's the same thing as the pavement.
Okay.
Oh, you have them?
Yeah. You'll notice when you go to San Diego, they're nice and big and
We
wide.
should have put that in the Independence chart.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Good job, Jamie. Well done.
Just on me, like, autonomy.
Whoa.
Oh,
Impressive.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I was struggling for time, not even gonna lie. But then I just wanted to look at the data from a different angle. So I wanted to look at and just see if there's any trend in change from 2014 to 2015. There wasn't really, but there was.
But you answered the question.
Yeah. Like, I mean, there was. To be fair, there was some change, and it's ordered by in terms of like percentage change.
Right. So the biggest gap between the two dots.
Yeah,
That
if I
can't be-
highlight
that
over,
can't be
you
right.
see a nice tooltip.
That can't be right.
Yeah, so that's 14.2%.
Because the dots are farther spread apart on the second one than the first one.
Yeah, but there's more records, aren't there? So your percentage
Yeah,
change
but you
gets
said
smaller.
Oh, because you're showing the violations, not the percentage.
You got it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You got it. Yeah, so then so obviously like here is our top
That was a
10.
quiz.
Yeah, you got to work it out.
Yeah.
I'm assuming a basic level of data here. But maybe I shouldn't assume. And then I've also put in a little in or out of state filter, which is quite interesting because like if I turn off in state, these top categories change. So out of state is the worst.
So passenger loading, that's just
Passenger
people
loading.
parking at the airport or dropping, because at the Philadelphia airport you can't pull up and drop people off just like you can at Heathrow.
I don't know.
Yeah.
In England, we don't have it because we're a much more peaceful nation. But yeah, like it was just a bit of fun and it was something to punch out with like a specific point.
Good. Well done.
Cool. Cheers.
Okay, here's my viz on parking violations in Philadelphia.
How did you even type all that much in that amount of time?
I type very fast.
How did you have time?
So I typed here because I wanted to show an overall explanation of how you need to use the dashboard.
Yep.
This is, which you've already seen, I bet. The city center of Philadelphia has the most fines. And here, I thought this was interesting. The parking is free within anywhere in the city on Saturdays.
After 11.
Yeah. But however, Sunday, there's much less tickets. So
So it must be Saturday after 11 until Monday morning or something like that, I bet. Yeah.
potentially,
Could
yeah.
be, yeah.
And on holidays, Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve, which I'm not sure when Thanksgiving is, so I didn't check that.
End of November.
End of November. Yeah, maybe just one of these. So at the bottom here, actually, I have the filters at the top as well. You can choose what area you like to see filtered and the type of violation that's caused the fine. So most of these were doubled. So there was one with the name like say fire hydrant and then fire hydrant CC. So I had to group those.
Okay.
I don't know why that was the case in the data set, but that was an interesting thing. So here I'm showing what are the most frequent types of violations, and then what's the average fine for.
So basically, don't park in a handicapped spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and what fine actually brings in most money if you're looking at this dashboard from, let's say, someone
Budget
who's taken
perspective, yeah.
budget.
That's interesting because parking in a handicap spot makes up 1% of your overall violations, but a massive amount of the overall
Exactly.
fine. Wow.
And if we scroll down, this one, I just can't do it for some reason.
Oh, close that little.
Unregistered, abandoned.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is also very high.
Oh, abandoned vehicles. Yeah. That's just somebody leaving it on the side of the road in a highway or something.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's my dashboard for the violations.
Good job. Well done. All right, Lee.
Best till last.
Although I'm not sure why I went last, because I was yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So get them from my computer. You can do it.
Just bring up Typo Public, and then they can just search for their name.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm going last, like you said.
Well, we got to have somebody good to end with, so we need to do
Exactly. This is the one that was probably sort of most pleasing to the eye.
if anything. But yeah, so same sort of math as everyone's been producing.
Did anybody figure out what the Hussein is? Did anybody search that? Did anybody figure out what that was? Hussein? Okay. What that agency is. I'd never heard of that before.
So I didn't have time to.
Okay,
so.
that's fine.
But yeah, just
Counterfeit hermits.
Yeah, so counterfeit
so it's
permits.
people with like they make a fake.
Yeah, and there was another one where it was like fraudulent parking spaces, like people had literally drawn out their own parking spaces, or something like that. I wasn't going to include that because it was the same amount, but it was just too much.
So it's basically 1,000 every time you get. So that's per violation.
That was on average. Yeah, that was the average for that one. Yeah, so that was the highest scoring
It's
one.
interesting that it's 1,001 because the handicap was 301, right?
Yeah.
301.
Don't know what the
it's
extra
interesting they
one.
don't make it around, unless it's because you're averaging across the years. Maybe it used to be something else and now it's gone up to the average.
Yeah, maybe.
Or something. Yeah.
Finally, something a little bit interesting I thought was that October's consistently highest for the sum of fines over the years.
I wonder when their fiscal year starts. If they need to get a certain number of
Yeah.
certain amount of revenue by the end of the year.
Yeah,
Quotas to hit.
Yeah, could be.
chucking it out.
They say there aren't quotas, but there
Well,
are.
the lower one of the lower ones was January, sort of.
We're
Yeah,
on
actually, I don't know if it
holiday
was
roll.
quite so consistent. I just chucked that in last minute.
Well, the parking police probably don't want to walk around in January because it's
cold.
freezing.
Yeah. So maybe there's some of that
Getting the segues.
Nice. Good job. Well done. Oh, housing. Oh, it seems like the housing authority. Okay. All right. So DS7, you guys are going to present now. So we're going to give it over to Alex. Might as well. They're here.
Just give you away.
I mean, we can wait and make them do it tonight when there's more people. No, the ones that aren't here yet, we'll make them do it. Okay. Yeah.
Andy, I saw Joe is online.
Oh yeah, Joe could present as well. Yeah, so Joe, make sure you bring yours up on Tableau Public so you can present. And George is online too.
You can just go in.
So neither one of you are exempt. Oh no, George dropped off. Isn't that convenient?
Like my name.
No, just go to public. Tableau, yeah. Tableau Public. Well, he's already got Tableau Public open on the tab before.
Just sign it.
Just go to Tableau Public at the top. Just go up here to Tableau Public and just search right there. Oh no, go to search and just type your name and then it'll find you. Yeah.
Is that your name?
Oh, do one of you guys want to get the other ones up on your computer? Easier? You can get theirs.
Remember what your name was?
So there's how many of you are 1, 2, 3, 4.
No, but I don't think, maybe it's not
No,
mine.
it's not coming in search, so it's not going to be like search for.
Yeah, but who knows? Maybe it is
I can find it.
Italian though.
You find it?
No.
No.
Just sign in. And Andy will find it.
Where is it? Probably here.
Okay, we'll go through that way.
Hey.
So you don't want to do this one?
Oh, but I changed it when I came to present.
Okay.
Can you sign this line? Yeah, easiest way is to sign it.
Maybe someone can go before me and
Is it UMANI?
yes.
I'll search for it though. Yeah, it didn't show up in all source like that. It's going to
What's your are you
But
regardless?
I sent
While you're finding his, we can do.
I think I sent it
Oh, are you backing your boy up now?
my profile web
Me and Marcus,
the
we're like
link
competitors.
on, by email.
Okay. I was obviously not much of a challenge, but
Why is it not letting me?
Copied all my work. He's leaving for Germany.
It's not letting me make a presenter either.
Leaving for Germany. I can't handle it here.
Oh. Can you stop presenting on his?
yeah. No, just log in.
It's not letting me make you presenter.
No, because I sent the link to him by email. So.
No.
Sorry?
I'm back in.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it must be my. Sorry, I'll wait up there.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you.
All right, Charlie, you want to come up?
Are we doing the NFL or
So, do you want to connect to mine?
Well, yeah, I'll show yours from the NFL as well. Yeah. Or you want to show your other one? Whichever one, that's fine. If you have another one. All right, so make sure you introduce yourself as well. No pressure.
Definitely this one, but the other one. Hi, everybody.
Over there, so we can see you.
I'm starting here.
Microphone's there. So you're talking nice and loud.
So this is the second viz that I put together for the interview stage. We were given a data set on NFL police encounters between 2000 and 2017, and I decided to look at how the encounter types vary between defensive, offensive, and specialist positions. So at the top is just a basic bar chart, and you can also use that as a filter or like a highlighting thing for the other ones. And then down to the left, looked at the different positions, and again color-coded with blue for defensive, red for offensive, and grey for specialist. But the percentage of each position on an NFL roster is different. So there are obviously a lot more defensive tackles than kickers.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep. You remember?
Yeah. So then what I did was try to normalize it for the number of players on a roster, which is
No, I don't want to make my next presenter. Sorry.
which is a little bit awkward because different rosters have different proportions for the different positions depending on how they like to play.
I need to make myself presenter. You've been presenting to no one.
Oh no.
Okay, there we go. Where is it? I lost it. There we go. Okay.
So what we can see from this is that the 0 point on this axis is basically where the number of encounters perfectly matches, or the percentage of encounters perfectly matches the percentage of players on a roster. And then any bars that extend to the right suggest that those players are more likely to have police encounters than you would expect based on the number of them in the league. And any bars that extend to the left are much less likely to have police encounters.
It's like a behavior scorecard, basically.
Yeah, so punters are really good and much less likely to have encounters than running backs, who are the worst. And I think there were three police encounters by punters in this data set, and
So
two of them.
it looks like the players that get hit the most and the smallest, so wide receivers and running backs get hit the heaviest, don't they? Because they're running full speed when they get
Not
hit.
necessarily. They don't get hit as much.
But when
They get hit
running backs
harder when they do get
hard,
hit.
don't they?
Cool.
What was did you find any challenges like when you were creating it?
Yes.
What were your kind of like biggest challenges?
I can't remember exactly now. It's been about 2 months since I looked at this or did it.
But she asked a lot of questions along the way about,
Yeah.
Just questions about the definitions, and I could tell that she had done a lot of research on what you don't know anything about American football, right?
Oh,
Very little.
I know
Yeah.
like a bit,
Yeah.
not loads. I've only been watching for like a year.
No, you don't.
So it wasn't totally new.
All right.
Great.
Well done. Good job. It's still not letting me make you presenter. It must be my my computer. Or I stopped it. Oh, there we go. I don't know why I'm having trouble making you presenter. Is it asking you to present?
Can you drag the?
It's just not working. It's okay. I'll bring it up here.
I don't know why it was not
I'll bring it up. Which one do you want to present? Your final viz? Oh, this was just our Makeover Monday data set this week, or 2 weeks ago. All right, attention please.
Okay, so yes, this was for our second, so I'm Elliot,
Final
by the way,
interview. Final
for
interview.
a final interview presentation. So we're giving data about bicycle thefts in the UK. So I decided to kind of just explore data in just a few different ways. So first, I just looked at, I tried to look at the percent difference between bicycle thefts compared to the previous month. So we had about 36 months, I think, of data. So, but they weren't like fully through for every year. So I figured if we compared month by month and from one month to the next, we'd get a better idea of how the pattern of crime evolves over time. So as you can see from the data, there's a clear pattern where there's a large fallout in bicycle crimes during the winter months compared to a steady and progressive increase throughout the summer months, which is expected. I mean, people use their bicycle less during the winter than they do during during the summer and the spring. Sorry, there's an interesting, as you can see from this graph, there's a very interesting bit that in August, in the middle of August, there seems to be quite a decrease compared to other years in August, which I mean would suggest that potentially, since people leave on holiday or tend to go on holiday at that point in time, maybe less people use their bicycles because bicycle thefts are mostly often would be related to, I guess, local users, maybe people who, foreigners who visit don't tend to bicycles and don't tend to maybe use bicycles as much as maybe locals do. And I had added a bit of interactivity where it kind of highlights just the different years and I guess just different points in time how this changes. So then I decided to essentially look at the percentage difference from the average in terms of like police forces, so who handles the crime and in what the bicycle theft crimes and in what quantities. So the Metropolitan Service, which is the London Police, handles considerably more crime compared to everybody else, as expected. And if we kind of scroll down over here, I guess Dryford Police Force and the City of London Police and Cumbria Constabulary handle significantly less crime than everybody else. Now, this is we were given a lot of reasons for what eventually occurs when the case does get brought forward, whether or not a suspect is identified, and if there is a suspect identified, whether or not they eventually prosecute them. So I had separated these two into two sections, and looking at the section of saying, did they identify suspect in the investigation, and whether or not they proceeded to court with looking at the suspect. So we can see that if we move around, play around with the data a bit, you can see that if you compare the bigger, I guess, police forces to the smaller police forces, you can see that on average, the smaller police forces tend to take a larger percentage of the instances of bicycle theft to court, as opposed to maybe the larger police forces, which have a lower success rate when it comes to identifying suspects and bringing them to court. But so that's interesting. They're definitely so. This was quite an interesting insight. So I tried to look maybe more specifically when you look at the court cases that do end up in court. What is the outcome of the court outcome? So is the case dismissed or is the case penalized? And based on each police force, what is the ratio of the people who tend to get penalized and those who get away with, I guess, they can't actually penalize anybody. So here you can choose different police authorities if you want to play around with it. But we can see that actually the bigger police forces, while they may bring a lesser percentage of cases, of course, to trial, when they do manage to make them come to trial, they actually have quite a high percentage conviction rate compared to the smaller police forces, which, as we had seen, maybe the Cambridgeshire Constabulary, which I guess is here, have quite lower rates of. So they bring a larger percentage of the cases to court, but they tend to, I guess, penalize and convict less.
Interesting tidbits.
So then I had just looked at maybe some small interesting information. So I mentioned most of those, but the British Financial Police went from about 4,000 instances records to actually none, like about 200 in 2016 and none in 2017. So I had assumed that potentially they can't handle bicycle theft crime, so it's been devolved to maybe other authorities.
Part of the Metro Police now,
or something else that takes care of it, because it's a bit odd that you go from such a large number of crime handled to none. And it was interesting to see that the police service of Northern Ireland actually handles a lot of crimes. So they've maybe handled more than I think it's about 2,000 or 3,000 instances of theft, but they never identified or brought a single person to court. So they have like a very, very poor success rate at like managing to get anybody.
They just don't care.
Yeah. So they don't really care. Whereas, so as we can see, these I talked about before. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So
cool. Well done. Good job. Who else do we have in here?
How long does that take?
Georgia.
I have it here if you want.
well, we have 5 days.
I'll just bring it up here.
Okay.
You've got a lot of work going through that.
This one, right?
How much time
Yes.
do you find left?
Not much. Not that much.
Much of each
Hello everyone, I'm Georgia. With my dashboard, I look at when and where is your bike more in danger in the UK. You can see from the first thing that you can notice in the question when is seasonality. Your bike is more at risk in during summer, especially in October and in September when we have a peak, and it goes down in January and December, and this goes from the all 3 years. Then I looked at when's your which is the the most dangerous month, which is October, and then of course September, August, and July. So we have an average of 40%, 40.8% of stolen bicycle between 2014 and 2017. Then we have from November to February 26.6%, and from March to June just 32.6%. So November to February is the lowest numbers of stolen bicycles. You have the lowest number of stolen bicycles. Then I looked at where is your bike more in danger. To answer this question, I downloaded the number of inhabitants, not to have any biased outcome. And I found out that the most dangerous is the city of London.
So that's because there's a lot of bikes here and there's nobody lives here, basically, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. What's Northumbria? What's up there? Is that York, or is that what's up there?
Up there.
Oh, I know where it is, but what's up there?
What's up in Northumbria? Yeah,
So universities up there or something?
Newcastle.
Okay.
University of Bloom as well.
Okay. Because you see Cambridge, right? And then Thames Valley is that Oxford? Thames Valley?
Reading.
Yeah,
Okay.
Reading. Mm-hmm. Yes, because when I first draw the map, Metropolitan Police was the one
Right.
with the most number of stolen bicycles.
But then it's
Just
like
because-
6th or 7th in your list if you look at it per 1,000 inhabitants. Okay. Interesting.
And this is the top 20, I think. And if your district is not listed, you can look it up in the map.
Good. Well done. Good job. Who's next? David. Where's yours here, David? This one? You want to do this one or you want to do your other one? This one? Okay. Oh, Ray, oh, I remember this. I shouldn't be laughing, it's not funny.
Oh, hi everyone. I'm David Sanchez. I'm originally from Spain, but I was living in DC for the last 5 years or so. And when I was handed the data set with the NFL arrests, I decided to look at something that was a big hit when I was living there. That was Ray Rice case. Ray Rice is a famous player in the NFL. He has very humble origins, and he's kind of the success story of the poor child, kind of coming from the ghetto, making it to the big news. Great player, won the quarterback, was community service, someone very involved with the community, and was named the most charitable person in 2012 in Baltimore. And in 2000, this was 2014.
Yeah.
He came into the news because he and his girlfriend, his fiancée at the time, were arrested in a casino. And during the investigation, there were some leaks to the press, and apparently he was indicted on aggravated assault charges. The day afterwards, they got married, and in the 5 or 6 months later, there was some investigations. There was some leakage to the press of the video from inside the elevator, where, well, no, that happened afterwards actually. So there was an investigation by NFL, and they charged this guy with 2-game suspension. But
has anybody seen the video of it?
No, it's bad.
It's horrific. He just punches his girlfriend and then just knocks her out.
Elevator, right?
Yeah.
So
it's horrible.
So NFL had the investigation, and then 1 month later, that video was released to the media. And when that made it to the public, it was a big outcry. And NFL said basically that they didn't have all the information, and they changed that 2-game suspension for a live ban suspension. But the truth is, they had all that information from April. And if you go to the next one, there was it was all over the media, and there were 2 billions of this history. One was Ray, the player here, and the other was Commissioner Roger Goodell, who is kind of the CEO of the NFL, and he has a lot of power to decide what the sanctions are and what aren't. And I was living in DC. I knew, and everybody in my job would talk about this, and we knew that Roger Goodell was just turning the blind eye to domestic violence. So when I was handed that data set, I just wanted to answer that question: Is that really true? Is it really true that since that guy, Commissioner Goodell, came into this, the NFL has been turning the blind eye to domestic violence? And so there are 2 graphs here. This is the number of encounters that NFL players have had related to domestic violence, or before Goodell. I'm going to split the terms between before Goodell, before he came into office, and afterwards, that's somewhere in 2006. So this is all domestic violence incidents, whether or not they were sanctioned in any way by NFL or by their teams in gray, and in red when they receive some type of sanction. And it's clear, or it's apparent that after he came into office, more and more cases are being sanctioned. So it's kind of counterintuitive, or counter what everybody knew at the time. And if we compare domestic violence with all the other offenses, it's actually, so for the rate for all the other offenses is kind of pretty much more or less constant. But you can see how domestic violence sanctioning in red is going up. And here there are two parts of this graph, and it's in this on the left is what NFL or the teams decided to do for all the cases, all the offenses that are in the data set. In red, they took some action. In gray, they didn't. And of the times that there is a court decision, which is not always, 70% of them were unfavorable. And that's kind of to have it in mind for all the cases. When we look at domestic violence, overall, this is for all the cases, like 13%. When domestic violence incidents are treated, it's almost 23% of the time they receive some sanction. The court decision is pretty much the same, 70%. And if we look instead of here, here we are looking at all the cases, and we can check just pre-Google or after Google, whatever. After Google, we have that 40% of the time they get a sanction. And if you go to pre-Google, it's just 3% of the time. So that's pretty much not the story that was in the news, and not what we thought. And the court decision really is pretty much the same. So, and not only that, but if we look at reincidents, so how effective are the measures, or how are the measures taking place, we can check before Google and after Google again, the number of people who commit repeating offenders. So before he came into office, from 60% were only offenders, one single time offenders. After he is in office, it's 75%, which you can read the other way, is that 40% were repeating offenders before, and now only 25% are repeating offenders. And the number of incidents before, just to iterate that before Google and after Google, there are more sanctions for when he came into office, and that's the average number haven't really changed that much. And so
it's just looking by team, right? Yeah. It's by team and division.
But I think there was something. So there was.
Did I skip one?
Yeah, I think so.
And this one?
No. Okay, yeah, so go for that. So pretty much that story, what it's telling us that what I knew, what I was living in DC, and what everybody was publishing in the news was a good headline, but really what the truth of how they are treating the incident. And so moving forward, what can they do next? So we can check how the infractions are occurring in the country, and if we just look at this small part, that's all the other incidents that are not domestic violence. And you can see the North is the worst offender by far. When we check domestic violence, it is actually the West that is doing worse. And we don't really, or I don't really know if one incident is categorized as domestic violence in the city of New York is going to be treated the same way in Seattle or in Texas, so that's a caveat of the analysis. But there are certainly 4 or 5 teams that are taking the lion's share of this incident.
Yeah.
So that's maybe where Commissioner Goodall could take their aim, or the NFL aim later, and try to crack it down. Yeah, that's pretty much the same.
Why is it so much worse in the West?
Well, there's not more teams, that's for sure.
So, well, the thing is,
nicer weather. They're outside more, maybe.
But domestic violence, is that a cultural thing? Like, is it?
I think a lot of it's down to CTE at the moment, don't they? That's what they're trying to gather.
What?
CTE, the brain
That's
makes you more impulsive and more reactive. It's like people running back.
I mean, you can't really answer that question with this data. It doesn't really give you enough. It doesn't give you enough about it. But culturally, I mean, the East and West Coast are very different.
But the players do not necessarily.
But players get drafted.
Players are drafted.
Yeah, the players aren't necessarily from those areas. So.
And also, how many years of data is this and how big is it?
17 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's 17 years.
Yeah.
When was Goodall?
2006. At the end of 2006.
Obviously, there was data before 2000. Maybe they're tracking more accurately now as well. But what was really interesting when he presented this was I had an impression that things were actually worse under Goodell. It's Goodell.
Goodell.
But yeah. But it was interesting because I went in with the same impression you guys probably did when he presented that first slide, right? He's a terrible commissioner, but he's actually he's doing more.
Trying to change it.
Is there a lot of other things that happen at the same time?
What's that?
How much of that could be attributed to Google and how much of it could be attributed to...
It could be social media as well. There's lots of things that could contribute to it. What would have been interesting to look at this is, I don't think this was in the data set, Charlie, I mean, you may not remember either, but did it have where the player was from? Originally.
I don't.
It didn't. Okay. Yeah, because that would be an interesting to look at it. What part of the country are the players from?
But I don't know if it's like one of those things that, like, as soon as there's a few occurrences, it's almost like systemic.
But the problem is it's like TMZ and stuff now, as they're saying, it just gets bigger and bigger.
Good. Well done. Good job.
Yeah, it's a really good story.
All right. Let's see if Joe's going to present, or did he drop off? Oh, he dropped off. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining online. We're going to hang up now. Goodbye. We're leaving. Peace out. See ya. Thanks for coming. We'll be back in 2 weeks. So we'll see you then. Bye.